Here's a question that'll mess with your head. What if I told you that scrolling through TikTok for 3 hours straight isn't just procrastination? It's actually a form of existential surrender? That your daily routine of checking Instagram stories, refreshing Twitter feeds, and binge-watching Netflix might be the modern equivalent of what philosophers call bad faith? Sounds dramatic, right? But stick with me, because French existentialist Simone de Beauvoir had some seriously uncomfortable truths about human freedom that hit different in our digital age. And trust me, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Picture this. You wake up, grab your phone before your feet hit the floor, and immediately dive into the endless scroll. Instagram stories, Twitter notifications, TikTok's For You page, serving up content tailored specifically to keep you engaged. Within minutes, you've consumed dozens of opinions, lifestyle choices, and worldviews, all curated by algorithms that know you better than you know yourself. But here's the thing that would have fascinated Simone de Beauvoir. You're completely free to put that phone down. You're free to choose a different career, move to a different city, hell, delete all your social media and go live in the woods. The fact that these options feel impossible or terrifying, that's not because they actually are. It's because freedom itself is terrifying. Beauvoir called this the ambiguity of freedom. We're simultaneously the most free generation in human history, and yet many of us feel more trapped than ever. We have unprecedented access to information, opportunities, and ways of living. But we're also drowning in choice paralysis and outsourcing our decisions to algorithms, influencers, and social expectations. Think about it like this. Imagine you're playing an open-world video game, let's say GTA or Skyrim. The map is massive. You can go anywhere, be anyone, do anything. But instead of exploring, you find yourself following the quest markers, doing the same side missions, following the predetermined paths. The freedom to create your own adventure exists, but it's overwhelming, so you default to the structure the game provides. That's modern life. That's what Beauvoir was getting at 70 years before smartphones existed. Let's talk about something that didn't exist in Beauvoir's time, but perfectly illustrates her ideas. The concept of personal branding. Whether you're conscious of it or not, you're constantly curating a version of yourself for social media consumption. Your Instagram feed tells a story. Your LinkedIn profile positions you a certain way. Even your Spotify playlists contribute to your digital identity. But here's where Beauvoir would have a field day. Most of us aren't creating these personal brands. We're unconsciously molding ourselves to fit pre-existing templates. The entrepreneur mindset, aesthetic. The plant mom who's got her life together vibe. The intellectual who reads philosophy and drinks specialty coffee persona. Beauvoir identified two types of people who flee from authentic freedom, and they map perfectly onto modern archetypes. First, there's what she called the serious person. And oh boy, do we have plenty of those today. The modern serious person has found their identity in external validation systems. Maybe they're completely absorbed in hustle culture, sharing Gary Vaynerchuk quotes and optimizing their morning routine because some podcast told them successful people wake up at 5 a.m. Maybe they've made their political ideology their entire personality. Every conversation somehow becomes about their chosen cause. Every social media post filtered through their ideological lens. Or perhaps they're the corporate climber, whose identity is so wrapped up in their job title and company culture that they can't imagine themselves outside of it. They wear the company hoodie on weekends, evangelize the company values, and genuinely believe that their quarterly targets represent some higher purpose. These aren't necessarily bad people. They're often incredibly dedicated and hardworking. But Beauvoir would argue they're running from the terrifying responsibility of defining themselves. They found a ready-made identity and value system that tells them exactly who to be and what to care about. It's existential comfort food. The serious person essentially says, I don't want to figure out what my life should be about. Just tell me what to believe and I'll believe it really, really hard. There's another group that Beauvoir identified, and this one hits even closer to home in our current moment. She called them subhumans. Though let's be clear, she wasn't talking about physical appearance or social status. She was describing people who've given up on the project of creating meaning in their lives altogether. Sound familiar? Meet the modern subhuman. They're doom-scrolling through Twitter at 2 a.m., watching TikToks until their eyes burn, binge-watching entire Netflix series they don't even enjoy, or playing mobile games designed to be addictive rather than fun. They're not engaged with life. They're just ... consuming it passively. These are people who've looked at the overwhelming array of choices and possibilities in modern life and basically said, nope, too much. I'm just going to let the algorithm decide. They don't choose their entertainment, the recommendation engine does. They don't choose their news, the social media feed does. They don't even choose their thoughts. They scroll until something makes them feel something, anything. The subhuman has essentially outsourced their agency to external forces. And here's the scary part. They often don't even realize they're doing it. It feels like relaxation, like me time, like harmless entertainment. But Beauvoir would argue it's actually a form of self-abandonment. Let me paint you a picture that might feel uncomfortably familiar. It's Sunday evening. You've got tomorrow off work, theoretically a day of possibilities. You could learn something new, create something, connect with friends, go somewhere you've never been. Instead, you open Netflix, scroll through the same recommendations for 20 minutes, settle on a show you've seen before, and spend the next 6 hours in a semi-conscious state of passive consumption. When someone asks what you did with your day off, you say you relaxed or recharged. But did you? Or did you just ... exist? Like a plant absorbing sunlight, you absorbed content without actively engaging with your own life. This is what Beauvoir meant by the subhuman. Not someone who's less intelligent or capable, but someone who's abdicated their responsibility to actively shape their existence. They're letting life happen to them rather than participating in creating it. And the really insidious part, our entire digital ecosystem is designed to encourage this passivity. Social media algorithms want to keep you scrolling. Streaming services want to keep you watching. Dating apps want to keep you swiping. The more passive you become, the more profitable you are. Here's where things get really twisted in our current moment. Beauvoir warned that people who abandon their agency become dangerous, not because they're actively malicious, but because they're easily manipulated. They become what she called tools for others' agendas. Look around. How many people do you know whose political opinions seem to change based on whatever their favorite YouTube creator said this week? How many friends do you have who've suddenly become passionate about cryptocurrency, minimalism, or some wellness trend because an influencer they follow made it seem cool? The subhuman doesn't develop their own values. They absorb them from whatever content they're consuming. And because they're consuming so much, their worldview becomes this weird patchwork of borrowed opinions and lifestyle trends. This isn't necessarily about being stupid or gullible. Smart, educated people fall into this trap all the time. It's about the exhaustion of constant choice and the relief of letting someone else do the thinking for you. Now let's talk about the workplace, because this is where Beauvoir's insights about the serious person really hit home. Think about the people you know who've completely absorbed their identity into their company culture. They use corporate buzzwords in casual conversation. They genuinely get excited about team-building exercises. They talk about disrupting industries and optimizing their personal lives like their business processes. These aren't necessarily people climbing the corporate ladder for money or status. They're people who found existential comfort in corporate structure. The company provides them with clear values, innovation, growth, customer obsession, clear metrics for success, KPIs, OKRs, quarterly reviews, and clear social hierarchies, org charts, reporting structures, promotion paths. It's like joining a monastery, except instead of worshiping God, you're worshiping quarterly earnings and user engagement metrics. The modern corporation offers something that traditional religious institutions used to provide: a comprehensive worldview, a community of believers, and a sense of higher purpose. But here's what Beauvoir points out. The serious person isn't really committed to the cause itself. They're committed to having a cause. If their startup fails or their company gets acquired, they'll often seamlessly transition to the next corporate culture with equal enthusiasm. The content doesn't matter as much as the container. Here's where things get really meta. Even the pursuit of authenticity can become another form of serious person behavior. Instagram accounts dedicated to living authentically. LinkedIn posts about showing up as your true self. YouTube channels about finding your passion and living your truth. The modern wellness and self-help industry has essentially commodified existentialism. They've turned the difficult, ongoing work of creating meaning into a consumer product you can buy, a methodology you can follow, a brand you can adopt. Find your passion, and the money will follow. Live your truth. Manifest your dreams. These sound like calls to authentic living, but they're often just new forms of the serious person mentality external systems that promise to tell you who you should be and what your life should look like. Real authenticity isn't a destination you arrive at after following the right steps. It's an ongoing practice of making conscious choices about who you want to be and how you want to live, even when, especially when, those choices are uncertain and scary. The brutal truth that Beauvoir understood is that freedom is a burden as much as it is a gift. Every choice you make closes off other possibilities. Every path you take means not taking countless others. Every identity you embrace means rejecting alternative versions of yourself. In a world of seemingly infinite options, infinite content to consume, infinite people to follow, infinite lifestyles to adopt, the weight of choice can be paralyzing. So we often default to letting external forces make those choices for us. The algorithm decides what we watch. The influencer decides what we buy. The company culture decides what we value. But here's the thing. Even choosing not to choose is still a choice. Even passively consuming content is actively choosing to live a passive life. Even letting others define your values is choosing not to define them yourself. Beauvoir's insight is that you're always making choices about who you want to be. You just might not be conscious of it. The question isn't whether you're free, you are, but whether you're willing to take responsibility for that freedom. Social media promises connection, but often delivers isolation. We curate perfect versions of ourselves for online consumption while feeling increasingly disconnected from our actual lives. We follow hundreds of people whose highlight reels we compare to our behind-the-scenes reality. This creates what Beauvoir would recognize as a particularly modern form of bad faith. We're simultaneously performing authenticity and avoiding actual authentic self-expression. We're both the actor and the audience in our own performance, both the product and the consumer in our personal brand. The result? We start living for the documentation of our lives rather than the experience of them. The Instagram story becomes more important than the actual moment. The LinkedIn post about our professional insights matters more than actually developing those insights through genuine engagement with our work. So how you escape this trap? Beauvoir doesn't offer a step-by-step guide, because that would just be another external system to surrender your agency to. But she does offer some principles. First, recognize that discomfort with uncertainty and choice isn't a bug. It's a feature. It's supposed to feel overwhelming sometimes. That anxiety you feel when you're not sure what to do with your life. That's the feeling of freedom. Learn to sit with it rather than immediately reaching for your phone or diving into the next productivity system that promises to organize your life for you. Second, Start making small, conscious choices about how you want to spend your attention. Instead of passively consuming whatever the algorithm serves up, actively choose what you want to engage with. Curate your information diet the way you would curate your actual diet. Third, experiment with creating rather than just consuming. Write something, make something, build something, even if it's terrible. The act of creation is fundamentally different from the act of consumption. It requires you to actively engage with the world rather than passively receive it. Finally, accept that you're going to make choices that close off other possibilities, and that's okay. The fear of making the wrong choice often keeps us from making any meaningful choices at all. But a life lived in conscious choice, even imperfect choice, is more authentic than a life lived in unconscious drift. Here's the thing that might be hardest to accept. You're already living authentically, just maybe not in the way you want to be. If you spend 3 hours a day scrolling through social media, then being someone who spends 3 hours a day scrolling through social media is currently your authentic self. If you've organized your entire identity around your job or your political beliefs, then being someone who needs external validation is currently your authentic self. The question isn't how to find your true self, as if there's some essential you waiting to be discovered. The question is, who do you want to become? What kind of person do you want to choose to be, starting right now? Beauvoir's existentialism isn't about finding yourself. It's about creating yourself, consciously and continuously, through the choices you make every single day. It's about recognizing that even your passive choices are choices and deciding whether those are the choices you want to keep making. Your freedom isn't something you need to find or earn or deserve. You already have it. The question is whether you're brave enough to use it. The systems designed to capture your attention and outsource your agency are powerful, but they're not omnipotent. Every time you close the app instead of scrolling for another hour, every time you choose to engage with something challenging instead of something easy, every time you sit with uncertainty instead of immediately reaching for distraction, you're exercising the freedom that Beauvoir argued is your birthright. The goal isn't to become some perfectly authentic, self-actualized person. The goal is to become more conscious of the choices you're making and more intentional about the life you're creating through those choices. Because at the end of the day, you're going to live some kind of life. The question is whether it's going to be the life that happens to you or the life you happen to create. What are you going to choose?